Hi, and welcome to this Saying No event with Roger Terriot from Evolution Training. Welcome. I'm just see we've got 10 people here already, so it's 7 o'clock and we'll get started. I'm just going to turn the screen. And you should see me pop up. So welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday evening. We're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about that tricky subject of how to say no, and with some NLP tips and tricks to help you along. And that should take us about half an hour. I tend to make these webinars half an hour, as it's a nice bit of time to take where you're not going to be on the webinar for hours. What I thought we'd do to kick ourselves off, I've got a couple of little polls here. And I'm going to put the first one up just to see, I just like to see who's done what NLP on the call. So let's just load the first one up, and here we go. So you should see that coming up now. So you can just click on one of those answers and we'll see who's on the call. So it should be starting right about now. So you should find yourself with a button to click, and that will give us a little bit of an idea of who knows what. They're coming up now. Thanks for clicking the buttons. Excellent. So we've got a foundation skills, some master practitioners. That's great. It's always good to get back to basics. The aim of these webinars is to stay with the basics so that any level of person can come along and hopefully get something out of it. That's great. So we've got most people with some NLP experience on the call. Fantastic. Well, I think with no further ado, we'll get going. I'm going to share my screen and I'll put a PowerPoint up and we'll walk through the saying no. Here we go. Beg pardon. Okay, we'll walk through the saying no. Okay, so this is a tricky subject, saying no, and many people get caught up with with too many yeses in their life and then end up with no time to do things. So there are two keys to saying no effectively from an NLP perspective. The first, which is pretty obvious, is the words you use, and the second is, what is your state? How are you feeling inside about saying no? You know, often we'll say, no, we don't want to do that, or we can't do that, and yet a little bit of pressure because of how we're holding our state pushes us into a yes, and then we often end up regretting it. So your words and your state, and we'll talk about both of those as we go through the presentation today. This is one of my personal heroes, Paulo Coelho, and I think this is a lovely quote from him. When you say yes to others, make sure you're not saying no to yourself. Whenever we say yes to other people, we're always going to get some time. We're always going to take time out of our day. We're going to be expending our energy and efforts in a direction that may not be entirely what you want. So it's just the first check. Are you saying no to something you need to do? Are you putting other people in front at a time when you maybe should put yourself in front? So why don't we say no more often? What is it about us human beings that stops us saying no? Well, we like to be nice people, most of us. We want to be liked, we want to be thought of as a nice person, and that often means that what we'll do is we will say yes to keep that likability going. You may be concerned at how others will see you, and maybe you're concerned that if you say no to people, others will not see you so favorably. And that's about your own self-image. This issue of saying no hits many points inside of us. It hits many belief systems that we have about how we behave with other people, how we speak to other people, and what we say to them, and how we respond to their requests. You don't want to hurt people's feelings because you're a nice person. And we do our best for the most part to avoid hurting people's feelings. So this may be another reason why we don't say no and we just jump in and say yes. And a lot of this stuff could well be running at the unconscious level. So we may not even be aware of it, as we'll talk a bit later on. This kind of their responses can often become habitual, and we'll jump in and then go, and then afterwards think, I don't know why I said yes to that. You may be saying yes out of that obligation or habit. That's just the way you do things. And if that happens, what that can do is that can build up resentment. That you're saying yes, and actually you don't really want to do it, but you end up doing it and end up resenting the fact that you're doing it. It could feel good to you in the moment, and then what happens afterwards? Is it still going to feel good in time to come after you've said that yes and haven't said no? Maybe you say yes and hope you won't have to repeat the activity. If I do it once, then I probably won't have to do it again. Maybe that happens, and maybe it just happens that the more you say yes, the more you get to do these things, because you become the person that says yes and does almost everything. Maybe you worry about the outcome of saying no. What's going to happen if I say no? And these are just a few of the reasons, some of them are conscious and some of them are unconscious, that we end up saying yes when we mean to say no. Now let's have a look at a little bit of research. While I was thinking about this topic and looking at what's been done around it, I found a little bit of quite interesting research. So an experiment was set up, and one group of people was giving a simple temptation and told to, in the face of it, that they should say, I can't do that. These are two ways of saying no, you'll see. One group would say, I can't do that. And the other group was told to say, I don't do that. It doesn't seem very much, but as I said before, you know, the words we use can have a big impact on how we end up behaving. And this is just two things: I can't or I don't. How often when somebody says to you, could you do something? Would you like this? You say, oh, I can't, and then a little bit down the road, you do it anyway, and that can't goes to a can very easily. Anyway, let's look at the results of the experiment. Here are the results. Participants told to say that I can't gave into the temptation or request 61% of the time, and those that said I don't gave in 36% of the time. It's a big difference. So just with a shift of our words and a shift of emphasis, and this is not the only way you can change your words. This is just one suggestion, one little bit of research that kind of proves the point, really. In the next step, the participants were told to set themselves a long-term health and wellness goal. And then when their motivation was started to flag, the sort of words they were using was, I can't miss my workout. Another group was told to say, I don't miss my workouts. And there was one control group that weren't given any specific instructions. So let's look at the results for that bit of research. Here's what they found. 10 days later, only 3 out of 10 control group members stuck to their goal. Only 1 out of 10 I can't group members stuck to their goal. Now that's pretty striking. And those that said I don't, 8 out of 10 stuck to their goal. So we have a couple of quite good bits of evidence here that shifting your language a little bit can make a big difference in how you're able to say no and to not engage in things that people tempt you with or that you get asked to do. Come back to that a little bit later on. And we can see that not only was I can't less effective than I don't, I can't was less effective than no strategy at all. So here's one of the first things we can do. We can start to change our language. And it's really important, it is, when we're thinking about NLP, we're thinking about neuro-linguistic programming. And it is the language we get dazzled by the techniques and dazzled by the ways we can clear phobias and do lots of brilliant stuff. But in fact, it's how we use our language that can have an absolutely massive effect on how we process things and how we process the world and how we then act and behave in the world. So let's apply a bit of NLP thinking, take a little bit of a case study and work through that. So what's the process that happens? What's going on inside? How can we make some changes in that? That's always the question that we want to ask with NLP. How can we change this process? If I can see a process, how do I change it? What NLP tools are going to be useful to us? And then what will it be like when I've changed it? So here you can see we're just looking at where are we now and where do we want to get to and what are the resources we're going to be able to use. So that wonderful, simple model of present state to desired state, and to get from one place to the other, we figure out what resources we're going to need to add to that. And again, if you've got any questions, by the by, you can stick them in the chat box. And I'll do my best to answer them at the end, or if I can, I'll answer them on the way. So a little bit of NLP. Let's take a look at a simple case, a typical sequence. Somebody asks you, please can you? And first thing that happens, and this happens very quickly, we do some unconscious observation. The voice tone, the facial expression, the body posture, and the words all get taken in. We process that inside. We process it against our belief systems, our self-esteem, our view of our capabilities and abilities. And very quickly, looking at the emotions, and we make some mind reads, we might make some judgments, and this happens in nanoseconds and probably below consciousness. And we give a habitual, we get the habitual response popping out of our mouths, and just as those times we go, oh, I said yes again when I should have said no. So we say yes, okay then, and great, can we do it now? And maybe you haven't even thought when you could do this. Maybe this then puts you under time pressure because you hadn't asked any questions about what it was, how long it would take, where it was going to occur. So let's just take this apart and begin to see how can we shift our own internal response, because that's really the place to start. What are we going to do about this? And what are the sorts of things that we can easily do without any fancy NLP techniques? The first thing we can do is to slow down. Take a breath, even ask for, say, can I think about it for a few minutes? Can I think about it for half an hour? Can I get back to you? Can I get back to you tomorrow? Slow the process down so that you can become conscious of what you really want in this situation. What's going to be the best for you, and maybe the best for them too. Do a little bit of self-observation. And in NLP terms, what we're needing to do is to be a little bit dissociated from this. Dissociate ourselves so we can observe ourselves. Okay, so what was my reaction? How was I feeling? Was I feeling obligated? Am I feeling the need to please somebody? What is going on? Do some critical observation. When you've slowed it down and you've done some observation, you've brought this into consciousness. then you can begin to ask yourself some questions. Now, we keep coming back to this presupposition of NLP, which I must say I really love, and over the last few years it's really become something that I use quite a lot in the business sense and in many other places. Is the thing is, we cannot not answer a question. So if you ask yourself a question, you're going to find that an answer pops up if you are willing to listen and be aware of what that might be. So you can ask yourself the simple, obvious questions. Have I got the time? Have I got the resources? Have I got the skills to be able to do what's being asked of me? Do I want to do it? Is this going to be pleasurable? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be rewarding? Or is it going to be a drudge? Is it going to be a hard labor? Is it going to be something that I'll ultimately feel resentful about? Because in my heart, I really didn't want to do it, and I actually said yes. And then we're storing up inside ourselves, if that's the case, negative emotions, which are not good for us. Will it be a pleasure? What will I get out of it? How will I feel when I've done it? How will I feel while I'm doing it? How much of a sacrifice am I going to have to make in order to accomplish this? So using this presupposition of NLP that we cannot not answer a question can be very useful, not only in this context, in many other contexts. With this question saying no, it's really shifting your internal response is the biggest thing you can do. Slowing down, taking some observations, and then beginning to ask yourself questions so that you can get the right answers to whatever's being asked of you. And you may end up saying yes. And if you do, you'll be saying yes from a better place. Or you may end up saying no. And you'll be saying no from a much stronger, much more congruent space than that habitual response. So there are 5 good things to remember when we're thinking about this problem of how do we say no congruently. You want to be as prompt as you can. Yes, it's okay for asking for a bit of time, but if you hang it out for weeks and months, then it's not going to be good. So say it concisely and be kind when you're saying no. Be honest, don't fabricate reasons just to get out of an obligation. People know when we're giving excuses. So just be straight and honest and say whatever it is that is true for you in this situation. If you can, be helpful. Offer some alternatives if you have to say no. Or if you want to say no, maybe you could think of something that they haven't. Maybe there's another person that would be better than you, more able. Be respectful, compliment the person's effort while you're saying no. Show that you respect whatever they're trying to do. So there's 5 things to remember, 5 things to help you say no. And I've got an extra one here. Be ready to repeat yourself. You may need to calmly repeat a few times before the other person is ready to accept. You need to be aware of how much pressure that person might put you under to get their outcome. And to be able to be strong enough to withstand that pressure if you need to, and to hold to your decision. And the only way you can do that is to have that kind of slow down, self-observation, ask yourself some questions so that you can come at this from a congruent, calm and solid place. And when you do that, your no is congruent and people accept it much more easily and are much less likely to push you into doing something you don't want to do. So stop saying can't and say I don't. That is a good piece of advice from that bit of research. When you say I don't, it puts you into a powerful and determined place. I don't statements put your mind in no compromise modes. So you want to experiment this for yourself. Experiment with what the difference is in saying I can't and I don't. See where you can substitute the I don'ts for the I can'ts. It's neuro-linguistic programming, and the words we use change the way our mind and brains and bodies work. Sometimes a simple shift in language can have a really big effect. So, the results, I said, what are the results from this? More time and more resources for you, because you'll be managing your time and your resources. Because instead of the habitual response when somebody asks something and you jump in and do it and you give up your time, you give up your resources, you're actually making decisions about exactly what it is that you want to do in this moment. We'll actually benefit from having clear relationships. People understand where you are. There'll be less resentment, less remorse, and less regrets. In you, it will build more resilience, will build you a habit of reflection. And through those things, you will become reliable. People will get to the place where they'll understand if they do ask you to do something and you do say yes, then they can count on you. So in all, being able to say no has some really positive effects in how we are in the world and what we're able to accomplish. I just thought I'd finish the little presentation with a quick look at some other ways to say no. I found these, I thought they were funny, and I think it's good to finish with a bit of humor. So here's something, I'm not advising you to say these, but here's some that are quite nice to think about. I believe there's someone a lot stupider who would enjoy doing that instead. That's a few of these. Last, such a task is no match for my incompetency. My schedule's packed with better things. There are many cool things to do, and your idea doesn't fall into that category. On a scale of I like this one. On a scale of maybe to absolutely, absolutely not. There are worse things I could agree to, but I can't think of any at the moment. And the last one, that's why heavens no. A little bit of fun at the end, just to use these if you want to break rapport. Anyway, that's just the start of things that you can learn, things you can expand on. It doesn't matter what level you're at NLP you're at. There's always something new to learn. When you come to an NLP training, there's coach training, hypnosis training, and one-to-one coaching. So there are many things that you can get from evolution training that we're happy to teach you. If you're already doing some NLP, if you're already in NLP at a certain level, you can access the other levels at half price. You can repeat something at half price with us. It's always a good thing to do. And we're 6 minutes to the end. And there are a couple of things happening with us at the moment. So what I did was, before I came up, I put a couple of polls up for you, a couple of offers up for you. This is an offer for the upcoming